When a sliver of frigid moonlight in the deep night of the Mediterranean millennia ago slanted across the stone path to the Cumean Sibyl's cave, cracked by years of drought, the air was steeped in the faint scent of withered grass and the slight acidity of ancient parchment eroded by time. Within the depths of a cavern shrouded in heavy shadows, where the distant strike of tides against cliffs could be heard, a tiny figure suspended in a transparent glass ampulla quietly spread her palms, rendered nearly translucent by extreme shrinkage. She was not plotting revenge against the deity who bestowed upon her that catastrophic gift. Instead, within her mind, utilizing an inner imaging sharpened to an acute edge by eons of observing the flow of time, she repeatedly ruminated on Apollo's cruel logic regarding eternity. She was the Cumean Sibyl, an intellectual sentinel who chose solitude at the zenith of wisdom, exiling herself within the bottle for 1,000 years. This is a chronicle of how restraint erupts into power, and how withering is transmutated into nobility. The genesis of the Cumean Sibyl's life was suffused with a brilliance peculiar to Aegean islands, a tapestry woven of sea salt and wild blossoms. It was a pale gold foundation of the purest faith and most agile intellect, flourishing under the radiance of divine favor. Born with the innate potential of a medium, she took charge of a microcosm that was ruthlessly cold, governed by sacred covenants and the strategic game of destiny. In marble corridors reddened by the sun, she learned to use her gaze to perceive the causal structures lurking behind every fragment of the future. Young, beautiful, and possessed of an intellectual haughtiness that made mortal men avert their eyes, she rejected all suitors. This almost pathological pursuit of true answers became the first incurable fold in her psyche, and the only armor that would guard her reality in a world of chaos. She understood that revelation was not bartered by prayer, but was a sacred logic that grew naturally from an ultimate respect for natural laws and duty. If her early vigils were the tempering of her will, then the moment Apollo extended his golden hand promising anything she desired was the turning point where the Sibyl's intellectual greed reached its zenith, and its destruction. Fate, in that endgame of eternity and its price, dealt her the heaviest and most perilous counters. Overthrowing the mortal fear of mortality, she resolutely grasped a handful of dust, praying to the god for a lifespan as long as the grains in her hand. Yet, in her extreme intellectual hubris, she forgot to demand the youth that should equate to such a life. In those quiet nights, where only the rhythmic slide of the hourglass could be heard, she watched the emergence of her first wrinkle and began, through ruthlessly precise calculations of causality, to issue silent commands that stabilized her inner order. At those moments, the Sibyl was the most sober and solitary artisan of the entire Mediterranean. She accepted every taunt from Olympus with silence, standing like a marble bell tower, solitary and soaring, yet indestructible. The summit of power in the eyes of the wise is manifested as the penetration of truth. The Sibyl gradually realized that by finally gaining the boundless reverence of the Roman royalty through the transaction of the 9 Sibylline books, she had obtained not just an altar, but a nihility that saw through the rise and fall of all things. Within her study in the cavern's depths, steeped in the scent of amber and piled with ancient Greek astronomical manuscripts, she silently observed the intricacies of the followers who had once championed or betrayed her. She discovered that those imperial ideals, once so grand as to be hubristic, appeared, before the cruel mirror of time, as a fragility more potent than any oracle. She wrote in her final lost manuscript, "I once believed I was building the future, now I find I am merely searching for a point of convergence within the scarred fissures of memory, where the soul no longer falls." This expansive clarity, born from seeing through the transience of material desires, became her hardest armor in her later years. The Sibyl's final season was spent in a state of profound solemnity and a silence illuminated by the radiance of a sage. It was the dawn of early autumn as civilization entered its twilight. The fine rain of Cumae fell without a sound, washing the stone steps at the cavern's mouth into a translucent, solemn gray. By then, the prophetess had become remarkably weightless from thousands of years of shrinking. Her once heavy silk ceremonial robes now hung loosely upon her slender frame, or rather upon the mere remnants of her consciousness. In her final conscious moments, she requested the spirit winds carry her to the terrace overlooking the distant sea horizon, to listen one last time to the tides, a melody belonging to her inner self, with no audience but the void. She closed her eyes, tracing a final arc of completion across her chest. No Roman bugles sounded. The evening wind simply carried away the final sigh of this great recluse. She left behind no vast dynastic legacy. She left only the scorched solitary wisdom of conscience that still glows after 2 millennia. Even today, 2,000 years after the myths faded, the name of the Cumean Sibyl remains the sole sanctuary for many insomniac seekers in the deep of night. What she left behind was not a towering monument of victory, but a spiritual template of self-restraint and high-born departure. She tells us that even if the entire world besieges you with upheaval, even if your era is destined to collapse, the order of your heart is still governed by your perception of reality. In absolute shadow, she maintained absolute sobriety. Amidst absolute temptation, she held on to absolute logic. Beneath the ruins of Cumae, worn smooth by history, she maintains that posture of leaning her head to listen, as if still soothing this increasingly restless and anxious world. Her life was an eon-long cultivation of deconstructing brilliance. The story of the Cumaean Sibyl thus draws to a slow close amidst the fading whispers of the tides in the valley. She was never a political opportunist seeking fame, she was merely an exceedingly weary soul who yet steadfastly refused to compromise with mediocrity. She teaches us that no matter how trivial your life or how deep your predicament, inner tranquility is your only true and eternal refuge. Please believe that in everyone's life there is a Cumaean cave of their own, a private space for dialogue with a self that requires no outward explanation. It is found not in trophies or fame, but in every resolute breath and your gentle gaze toward the world. Good night, and may sweet dreams be with you.